welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top podcast. I don't remember what episode this is. I think it's 83, 84. I've lost count because we don't keep it in. I mean, hey, we've revolutionized. We don't keep the episode number in our YouTube titles. That's only a strictly podcast version. But hey, if you're not on the podcast, if you're on YouTube, and hell, if you were on podcast, we appreciate you being here with us today. Obviously, YouTube folk, you get it live, you get it first. We have Daniel Flick from SI Falcon Report, coworker of mine, and he doesn't just do the Falcons. He does everything, anything and everything. 10 different NFL teams. Dan, how you doing today?
Tired. Tired's a very good way to phrase the last week. I'm sure you're in the same boat. A lot going on, but happy to be on here talking ball.
Absolutely. And guys, this is gonna be. We got two Dans today. Okay, we got Dan times two, and we got me. And as Zachary Moss says, Dan, and all exclamation points. Dan, how you doing? Dan, it felt like it's been a month, but we just did an episode last week.
Hey, listen, this is my favorite time of the year. I've told you since day one that NFL draft is my favorite sporting event. It's not even an event, but it's just I love the NFL draft because it's like playing roulette, and you're picking your numbers and you're putting your colors and you're doing all that stuff and you're hoping to get lucky. And I really feel like the NFL draft is like that for teams and for fans, right? The team is hoping they pick the right number, and the fans, we're trying to get it all right. We're trying to act like we know something. So my favorite time of the year.
Absolutely. Daniel Flick, we're going to cover all bases tonight.
Let's do it.
We're going to cover Georgia first because obviously we got Georgia folk in here. A lot of probably Go Dogs going on in the comment. Maybe even have our guy Rudes barking in the chat. Shout out to Rudes, by the way. Rudes was in the chat at 7:32 yesterday because, as I said in the comments, I messed it up and set it to go live yesterday when we were supposed to go live today. So shout out to Rudes. I don't know. He says, great. The one time he was on time, we were not. So Rudes, if you're here, we appreciate you being here with us, man. And yeah, Daniel Flick, let's get right into it. We got Georgia set the record. 15 players selected last year. I don't think they're going to touch it. I don't even know if they got 15 players going out this year. First off, let's just get your overall thoughts on this class of Georgia players. And I'm going to shift it over to Dan and let Dan get in that first question.
Yeah, overall class, I think very, very talented. Obviously, it's what UGA is pumping out, right? It's just a bunch of talent. I think, at the top, you got, obviously, you'll get likely Carter Smith and Broderick Jones, all potential top 15 picks. I feel pretty safe about saying that. Probably, floor of top 20. Maybe Ringo slides in late. I might be forgetting a name in there as well. But, I mean, you're looking at potentially 4 to 5 first-round picks. And I think there's a handful of other guys. Obviously, I would expect probably you'll get McIntosh in there too, probably at some point, right? Probably 3rd, 4th round range. I think he'll end up going. You've got Smith, the safety, linebacker Smith. You got safety Chris Smith too, right? He'll be in there. I got all my Smiths messed up. Arthur Smith on the mind too. We got a lot of stuff going on. So Chris Smith, I love Chris Smith, baller. Yes, Zachary, thank you. Washington will be, I would imagine, first-round pick as well. So probably looking at 5 Dogs in the first round. So I think, very good class for Georgia. Probably won't touch last year, but very talented. I think probably 8 guys top 100 is a fairly safe bet. So, I guess in comparison to last year, it's kind of underwhelming. But, I mean, still going to be, probably top of the charts in all of college football.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Daniel said right there. I think this is just going to be another opportunity for Kirby to point at the TV and say, hey, look at this. This just more of my guys. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think it's crazy to say there's a potential for Georgia to have 5 guys in the first round. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe Miami, and I may be missing somebody, but I can't remember anybody putting 4 or 5 guys in the first round in consecutive years. I mean, it's, there are teams like Alabama puts guys in the first round every single year, right? But I can't remember a team that put 4 or 5 in the first round in consecutive years. I mean, the only team I could even think of without doing any homework at all would be Miami, the Hurricanes. Those, what was that, 2001, 2002, that time era? I mean, that team was absolutely loaded. And I may be off by a couple years, so don't crucify me. But, listen, Georgia's a lot of talent, really top heavy. Daniel, would you say top heavy with this class?
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking about that prior to hopping on. There's a lot of guys, like I said, probably potentially like 8 in the top 100. And then you think more after that, there's not really a lot of guys. I mean, just which I think speaks as well to the talent that UGA has coming back as well. And so, I think for sure top heavy is probably a good way to phrase it. But I think you might still see a few guys pop in, and also probably a few former Georgia players will probably end up on the third day as well. Which modern day college football, all the stuff with the portal, are you really claiming it? That's up for debate, right? But probably some recognizable names for sure.
Daniel, first prospect. This is one that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to, obviously, this is not a first-round guy. I don't know where he is because his combine probably tanked his draft stock a little bit. I thought Christopher Smith was going to be at best, so I thought going into the process he was going to be a first-round pick. He was going to sneak into that first round, kind of like Lucine did out of nowhere. And then he went to the combine and ran like a 4.62, something like that. Obviously not what you want for an undersized guy. What are your thoughts on Christopher Smith?
Yeah, I love Christopher Smith as a draft analyst. Huge fan. Love the guy. I remember watching him, in the season. And again, I'm not a fan of Georgia. I don't really have an affiliation, right, to like anybody on the team. I'm just from like a analyst perspective. I'm a huge fan. I love the guy. I think just his range up top, the way he triggers, against the run. I mean, I really thought he was going to, like, on tape, I thought he was like a top 50 pick type good. I thought he was a complete dog. He is a complete dog. With that being said, the way that he tested, probably looking 4th round, right? But I mean, I think he'll end up being a really good pro, and I feel like, the last few years, UGA's had a few safeties that haven't tested off the charts. That have ended up kind of falling on draft day, but they were just really good college players. And I kind of think Smith will be in that same conversation, but I mean, he's a heck of a football player. And at the end of the day, I think he'll end up being a good pro for a long time. I'm really, really a big fan of his. Like of all the UGA draft prospects, he's the guy that value wise, I think has a chance to really outplay where he'll end up going.
Well, let's take a little fan question here. Zach wants to know the chances of the Falcons taking Bijan. Now, listen, this has been picking up a lot of steam. All right. Is there a backstory here?
Not entirely. It's just a bunch of Bijan talk has just been all over the timeline the last few days. Yeah. To answer the
picking
question,
up steam.
Yeah. So chances Falcons are taking Bijan, I would put it 20-25%. Right in that range. I don't think it's compared to, the rest of the draft class, it's actually a fairly high percentage mark, right? Compared to the overall pool of players you're picking from at pick 8. But I don't think it's a lot of the buzz lately has been is Bijan. It's all Bijan. Everybody, every draft, every, insider, everyone's like, it's Bijan, I've heard Bijan. It's, he's been linked to Bijan, whatever it might be. I don't think that's where they go. That's not the indication that I've felt. With that being said, in the argument of BPA, I think Bijan will have a chance. I just don't know. I don't think that's where they go. It's just kind of a gut feeling on my part. I don't think that's not how I see it playing out. I think they love Bijan. Why would you not? Right? I think everybody loves Bijan. It's just, I think they'll end up addressing pass rusher at 8 probably, and then kind of addressing running back a little bit later.
See, I was with you on that line of thinking until I realized that this coaching staff and front office staff has not taken a defensive player in the first round. They have not in their tenure. And then you start looking at what Arthur Smith does. They run the ball, start picking up steam. He's rated the 2nd overall best player in the draft by Scouts Inc. Whether you take any solace in that, or stock in that, whatever. I get it. I mean, I was listening to Fountain today talk, and he was talking about they have their 2 columns. They have their best player available and then best player with fits a need. And if there's a separation, they're going to take the best player, right? They don't want to have to reach at all. especially where they are. Now, people ask them about moving up and down in the draft, and I'm getting to a question, I promise. People talk, about them wanting to potentially move up or down, and Fontenot's like, I'm not going to tell you anything because why would I give that away? And then Fontenot broke out I love reading articles about things I said from people I've never spoken to. So that was hilarious to me. Yeah, I think if Bijan's in play, I do think that they can give a little ground right there. And there, I guess the speculation today was it Carolina? No, somebody wants to move up 3 or 4 spots, and the Falcons would move down a couple spots. Maybe it was Carolina. I don't remember who it was, but anyway, then they could potentially get Bijan at like 12 or 13 in a more comfortable spot, so to speak. So if there's movement, do you think that if they're going to move down, does that make it more likely it's somebody like Bijan, or if they move up, it's definitely somebody not like Bijan? Right?
Yeah, very good question. So to me, it's kind of been for the last week or two, it's been the feeling that it's the trio of Robinson, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, and then shout out Nolan Smith. Shout out the Georgia guys, right? That's for me, it's kind of been the feeling that it's going to be one of those 3. Now, of course, if Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech somehow falls to 8, I think he would be home run pick for sure. If Witherspoon from Illinois falls, I think they'd be pretty excited about that too. But I think really you're looking at the trio Van Ness, Robinson, and Smith at pick 8. There has been buzz about trading down, a lot of buzz. I think the Falcons are one of probably 2 or 3 teams, in the top 8 who are really interested in moving down. And so I don't think Bijan – for me, moving down is less about Bijan and more about kind of, maximizing value at the positions that, I guess in comparison to where the rest of the NFL has talent, right? Because, if you look at the teams picking behind the Falcons, you've got a lot of teams looking more at offensive linemen. Chicago might even take Carter at pick 9. And, the Falcons kind of haven't been really involved there, it seems like anyways to me. And so you can move down and you're probably still picking from the same trio of players at pick 12 in comparison to pick 8. And so I think that's probably why they're so interested in moving down. And I'm not really sure that anybody they'd take at 8 wouldn't be there at 12. So that's kind of how I view it though.
And I promise we will hit Falcons. I do want to steer it back towards Georgia for a minute. Mm-hmm. Great questions by Dan and Zach. Oh, well, here we go. I told you, Daniel, it was coming, and we're going to hit right now. Also, where do you think Stetson falls? From Zachary Malls, our guy. Man, we love Zach. Zach always chips in. You're on the spot, Daniel Flick.
Yeah, I'm going to go – it'll be the 3rd day. I'm going to go round 6 is where I'm going to go. Somewhere probably around like pick 200 is where I'm going to – that's where I'm going to lean. I think he gets drafted. There have been reports that, some teams aren't as high on Stetson. I feel like there's been some concerns about the way that he handled the pre-draft interview process and everything. But again, the guy wins games. I feel like he proved a lot of people wrong with his arm this past year. Hole shots, some of the things that he's done, I feel like vertically, I feel like he improved quite a bit in 2022. I really think, he put enough on tape to where he'll get drafted. His resume is obviously outstanding. And so to me, I think you're looking at a draftable player. I think, there was at one point talk of him landing top 100 because of, all the energy that he created from the way that he ended the year. I kind of think maybe he didn't do himself a ton of favors with the way some of the pre-draft cycle played out. That's going to end up probably hurting his stock quite a bit, but I do think he gets drafted. I would look probably the latter part of the 3rd day.
And real quick, then we'll go to Dan. I want to get your thoughts. Your Falcons mock, which could be found on sifalcons.com. Shout out. You got Nolan Smith going at 8. We want to get your thoughts on Nolan Smith. This is something me and Dan have talked about, along with our friends Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams, who shout out to the boys on at 8 o'clock Classic City Sports Podcast. We'll follow. Dan, there's a big debate around Nolan Smith. Obviously, you know his background as well as any of us. 5-star coming out of high school, number 1 ranked player coming out of high school and lands at Georgia, and never really puts up the production that a number 1 player like many would think. What does an NFL draft analyst like yourself think of Nolan Smith?
Yeah, I think when you look at Nolan Smith, you're talking about a guy who can really, really run and he plays bigger than 238 pounds. And so to me, everybody at Georgia raves about his character. I'm sure you guys are well aware of that, very highly thought of. Country strong is the word a lot of people have used when talking about Smith. And I think with him, the special thing about him, I feel like when you look at top 10 pass rushers in particular, a lot of the talk about those guys is, yeah, he can get after the quarterback, but he can't stop the run, right? And it's like with Smith, it's the exact opposite. Guy can really defend the run. Great edge setter. I mean, he can shoot gaps about as well as anybody in the draft class can. I mean, stellar. Really quick. I was talking with one of the Oregon offensive tackles at the combine. He was like, that was the toughest guy I had to block in my entire college career. He's just so quick. He's just outstanding athlete. I feel like when you talk about Nolan Smith, you're just talking about a guy that's really, he's only getting better from here. And I think he's already going to enter the league with such a balanced overall ability to really be a 3-down playmaker. And I feel like when you look at where the Falcons are at pick 8, they're looking for a guy who can. So at the end of last year, Arthur Smith talked about we have to be able to rush the passer with 4 and stop the run with 4. Obviously, everybody wants that, but he talked about it at length, and they've really put a big emphasis on finding guys who can, obviously pressure players, and then again have an impact against the run. Smith fits that vision to a T, and so to me, that's why I see the fit. And that's why I think Smith is particularly intriguing because he does have more to his game than a lot of college edge rushers do.
Dan?
So every year in the draft, we see 2 positions go really, really high because there's usually, maybe not one, but with the offensive tackle, there's usually a very few elite ones. This is the first time in recent memory that I can recall an offensive tackle is not even being discussed in the top 5 or 6 picks. Now there's an outside chance that somebody might take a flyer. It may be number 2 or something like that, or like real early. But I mean, you're seeing like really the first offensive tackle, and most of these mocks come off around 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Are they just not? Am I missing something? Are they just not elite, or is there just is so many teams quarterback crazed? What am I missing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Around the league, the tackles aren't valued that highly, in the class this year is kind of the indication that I've gotten. There's some love for Paris Johnson within the league. There's been some recent buzz out of nowhere about Broderick Jones kind of being just kind of some questions about, the way that like his makeup is. And I don't get those at all. There's really nothing there, but some people have made a little bit of a big deal about that, but I don't think it'll affect him too terribly much. I think really the problem with the tackle class is there's really nobody there it's like everybody's got questions to him, right? I mean, with Paris Johnson, it's all about consistent, pretty much consistent finishing with him, right? It's kind of, he puts up, a couple reps here where he's just outright flat out dominant. And then you see a couple other reps where he's not really anchoring that well, whatever it might be, And so, I mean, obviously Skoronski has shorter arms and, probably going to be forced to play inside, and you're not going to take a guard at pick, 5 unless he's Quentin Nelson type of elite. Right. And so I think really the problem is just everybody's flawed at a higher degree than what we've seen in years past, I feel like. And, offensive line play, there was somebody a few days ago that had a very good point about, offensive line play in college, and like maturity level of offensive line play in college has kind of taken a hit in recent years, is what the person said. And I kind of looked into it. And if you kind of look at this year's draft class, it kind of is reflected in that. The interior offensive line class, not very good either. There's a lot of teams who've been talking about having to probably draft a guy around earlier than where they'd want to, just because they're going to end up, there's kind of a higher value on them just because there's not that many good ones this year. And so it's kind of the same deal with tackle. I mean, you look at the top 3 to 4 tackles and it's not really, there's not much after them as far as real starting upside. And so, which is actually even more concerning than when you consider that there's not really a team lining up to draft a tackle in the top 5. So,
right.
There's a bit of there's for sure a little problem there. I think I don't think there's a real elite player as far as consistent every down, like we know what we're getting. And I think that's probably the main drawback.
The other question I had was wide receiver. We have seen a list of wide receivers where, there's always been the alpha, right? The one that was just everybody wants really, really bad. But then there's another list of 4 or 5 that are just outstanding in the first round because wide receiver is one of those positions that can have an impact very early, and they can have a dramatic impact in some cases. Who is the first wide receiver off the board? Because I have not seen a consensus, very much like the tackles. There are some in there, but I've not seen a consensus number one. Who do you got?
Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba has kind of picked up quite a bit of steam lately. But the interesting thing about that, Zay Flowers, I think, has gotten a lot of buzz as well. If you look at teams picking anywhere 20 to 32, there's a ton of buzz. Like everybody in the 20 to 32 range, or I guess it's 31 this year. It's like they love Zay Flowers. They're connected with Zay Flowers, whatever it might be. With that being said, I think Smith and Jigba ends up being a potential top 15 pick. I don't know if I don't think he gets past Houston at pick 12. And so to me, anywhere probably, I think top 15 is probably his absolute floor. There's one person that, I was talking to a few days ago that actually floated him as an option for Atlanta, which I don't really, I don't abide by that, but it is what it is. I do think he ends up being a top 12, top 15 pick. I feel like a lot of evaluators now kind of think he's separated himself from the rest of the pack at wideout. But again, it's kind of like last year where it's a bit of a more of a kind of flavorful, I guess, pick as far as who like, I guess last year was you got speed, you got size, whatever it might be, you got route running nuance. This year it's JSN, who's just really nuanced. And then you've got Zay Flowers, who's just really fast. You got Quentin Johnson, who's really big. You've got a bunch of flavors of wideouts, and I mean, to me, that's probably why you're seeing such a big variation. But I do think JSN has kind of, in the eyes of the media at least, has kind of grown into more of a consensus, but it's probably still not fully there just because, again, the flavors of wideouts is just so just big this year in particular.
Absolutely. Real quick, before we hit the mock drafts, we are going to do some mock drafts. Shout out to PFF for allowing us to use their simulator. Dan, final thoughts on? I'm gonna shout out 2 names real quick. We've done Nolan Smith. You've gave us the tidbit on Broderick Jones. Let's hit the mammoth out of all of this draft class and Darnell Washington, and we're gonna hit Keely Ringo because Keely Ringo is a very interesting prospect. Great story there with his mom, and now he's kind of become a controversial prospect in the Georgia side of things, but we won't get into that. Let's go with Darnell Washington first.
Yeah, I mean, freak show, right? Total freak show. I remember watching one of the Oregon safeties ahead of the Shrine Bowl, and it's just Washington's hurdling guys. I mean, I'm sure everybody's probably watched that clip hundreds of times by now, right? But I mean, he's just total freak show. Washington, I think it's a really good tight end class, but I think when you watch Washington and you see the way that he can block, he's a really unique blocker, especially with the way that college football is using tight ends nowadays. There's not many guys who can block like he can. And I mean, he's a legitimate, full, completely well-rounded tight end. And, just special athlete, special body. I mean, he's going to be, in my personal opinion, he's the most intriguing tight end in the draft this year. I think his upside is off the charts. I think he's, as a blocker, he'll be an early impact player. And again, special physical player. And so to me, I think players like that, the upside there, I think he'll end up being a steal late round 1. I do think he sneaks into round 1. If he doesn't, I think it's probably going to end up being because of just how loaded the tight end class is. But I think with Washington, you're just really looking at a special athlete first and foremost. And obviously, really, I think if he'd been at any other college last year, you're probably talking about him in a little bit of a, maybe higher light from a production standpoint. But obviously, he had a pretty solid tight end ahead of him at Georgia. I do think Washington will end up being one of those players who's more productive as a pro than as a college player, and he was still really impressive as a college player, obviously.
And then real quick, Keely Ringo thoughts. Obviously, the hips are concerned. It is talked about often in the space. What are you seeing from Keely Ringo?
Yeah, I left his film feeling very mixed about him. And I feel like that's kind of how a lot of people are these days, surrounding Keely. But I think obviously very talented, very, very talented. Obviously, he's got, strong pedigree, 5-star recruit, I do believe. Yeah, very highly touted out of high school. Obviously had the huge interception against Alabama. Pedigree wise, what he's done in college, very impressive. It's just he is stiff. You kind of worry about that. His eyes got a little bit undisciplined at times, I felt like, as well last year. But I mean, you have to love how physical he is in route. I think, he really competes. He's really competitive. And he's big, linearly quite fast. I'm not sure he always trusts his linear speed, but again, you talk about guys who are big, physical, and can run in a straight line. Anyways, I think Ringo, very intriguing, probably as a cover 3 corner with some press man potential, in my personal opinion.
See, for me, a guy like Keely Ringo, and I'm going to jump in here because Keely's extremely talented, right? He's extremely fast. I think he was like a 10-4, 10-3, maybe even 10-2 guy in high school on the 100. And he's big. Like you said, he's big and he's physical. And coaches and organizations don't mind taking a chance on a tackle or a corner because of one of two things. Well, if they're really small, right, that's all they can do. But if you take Keely Ringo, you want him to play corner, and let's say his hips are a little bit stiff. He's not that fluid. Move him to strong safety. With his frame, you can add weight and you can put him inside the box. Then with that speed, he's going to be a matchup nightmare for anybody offensively. So, for me, I think you're going to see a team take a chance on Keely, probably higher than most people think, because if he pans out at corner, you got a home run because he's going to have a physical matchup outside all night long. But even if he does, and if he's not extremely successful out there, you can move it inside. He's physical enough to play inside, because I think there's a lot of corners that are not physical, don't want to hit. So talk Kirby to me. Nice.
Shout out to Robert from the DGD podcast. Boys, let's hit the mock draft. I told told Daniel we didn't want to go more than 30 minutes, but hey, as I told him, also warned him, comments get crazy. We can't always hit that. So let's do it. We're going to go pick by pick. We're going to have 3 tabs open. Like I said, using PFF's mock draft simulator. You're going to see the background here. All right, let's switch over. All right, Daniel, we're going to go Daniel first tab, Dan second tab. I'll go third tab. Daniel, who you got starting with the Panthers?
I'm going to take Bryce Young. I will take Bryce Young. That's where a lot of the smoke is nowadays. That's where I'm going to pick.
Dan, first pick.
Same thing, and I think the reason is, and I understand he's small, and I understand what the other guys are saying. Look at the size. Hey, but don't do that with Bryce. But it's just because he's the best quarterback out of all of them, just pure quarterback.
Preach. Preach, Dan. Preach, brother.
I'm going with it. Bryce Young makes too much sense. All right, going back to Daniel first. Texans, it's an interesting pick. Most talked about pick. I don't know where you're going with this one. I don't know how all 3 of us are going to go with this.
Before he starts, this is where the draft starts. This is where this could go so many different ways. This is where the draft starts, and this is how people's boards can be so different. Go ahead, Daniel.
I've gone back and forth on this one a bunch. My heart is like, it's got to be CJ Stroud. My brain, I'm going to go with Will Anderson. I think that's the direction I'm leaning. It's so difficult. It could go probably about 4 directions. I'm going to lean Will Anderson today.
So I promise you, I'm not trying to copycat you. And that's Harrison. We were talking about this before we came on. I said everybody in the world says a new coach has to have a face of the franchise with a quarterback, but he is a linebacker. He came from San Francisco that just watched them pull 3 different quarterbacks in the season and still make it to deep into the playoffs. So I think he's going to go with where his heart is, where his bread and butter is. I think he's going to go with the best defensive player in the draft, and that's Will Anderson.
If we go 10 of 10, Dan, I'll be pretty happy about that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch up from the group. I think Vegas knows something. Now, no, I don't want to do trades, because once we get into trades and all that, it's going to get messy. But so maybe this isn't for the Falcons, but Vegas knows something, or not the Falcons, the Texans. I think Vegas knows something. We saw with Trevon Walker last year when he started shooting up the with the odds and all that. It got interesting. I'm gonna go Will Levis here. I don't By no means do I think he's the second best quarterback in this draft. But for the sake of controversy and the sake of believing what Vegas tells you, I'm gonna go with Levis.
I don't hate that. I'll be honest with you. It's bold. I don't hate it. I thought about it too. I hate
it. I hate it. God almighty.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Hey,
no,
why don't you put some mayonnaise in your coffee, Harrison?
I talked with one of his Kentucky teammates about it. He told me something like, you know what? He can do whatever he wants to do. Try and stop him. And I'm like, yeah, fair, but it's still kind of just wrong.
Hey, at least his teammate has his back.
Yeah. Okay. Pick 3, Arizona. I think, in this instance, they would trade out. But again, if we're not, on the trade mocks, I'm going to go with Tyree Wilson here.
I think they have him. We might have to go search for him real quick.
Ooh,
there he is.
How low? Wow, PFF's low on Tyree.
Dan Kyler, who you got?
Oh, well, I think this pick gets moved, right? So I think this is going to completely throw off my draft board. But I don't know. I guess you're going to have to go for the sake of this, because I really don't know who's going to be there, because I think this pick is getting moved. I think they're going to go just so give me Paris Johnson Jr.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, like if I'm picking for Arizona, I need somebody to protect Kyler Murray because he's tiny. And I mean, they're not taking him there. Maybe Paris goes there. I don't know, but that pick's getting moved. I just feel that.
I do.
Yeah. Sorry, deflect. I'm gonna go with them too. I'm going with them. We saw there was a report yesterday or the other day that Paris Johnson to Arizona was being talked about. Kyler likes him, and liked having him in the building. I'm gonna follow down this suit.
I don't hate it. I honestly, I kind of like it. I kind of do like that. Okay. Pick 4, Indy. I've got Levis on the board still. I'm gonna follow the smoke there. I'm gonna pick Will Levis to Indianapolis there.
What say you, Dan?
I mean, I could be a contrarian and say AR-15, but it's not. It's going to be Levis. I mean, I think Daniels. I mean, we've all seen it. That connection is strong. There's a lot of people think that they're going to move up to make sure that they don't miss out on them. So I'll play it safe there.
For me at 4, I already got Levis off the board. I'm going to go with Stroud here. I think a quarterback goes, and I think Stroud falls to 4. In my other mock draft, I had him falling to 7, which I think is probably a really good fit for him out of the teams in the top 10 that need a quarterback for the Raiders. But I'll go Stroud to Indianapolis. Got
Stroud over Stetson there, Harrison?
Man, sadly, I think they may kill me in the live chat, but it's all right.
All right, pick 5, Seattle. I think this might be where we see Jalen Carter come off the board. It's really that whole deal. I'm very excited, just to watch how that plays out, because it quite literally. I was talking with someone the other day. He's like, it's a complete coin flip, a literal coin flip as to whether or not they love the guy or have him off the board. I'm going to lean here with that they love him, and so I'm going to pick Carter at 5.
I think we made you unanimous on this. Dan, what do you say?
Yeah, 100%. Pete Carroll, defensive guy first. They love him. They've had him in multiple times. It's Jalen. That's what I mean. If Jalen slides past there, I would be floored.
I don't have Will Anderson off the board, but screw it. I'm going Jalen Carter too. I don't know how. I don't know what I missed here. Interesting. All right.
Yeah, Detroit, I'm going to go with a corner. I'm going to pick Witherspoon from Illinois here for them. I like that fit for them. I think he's a dog, and I think the Lions want a dog at corner. So I'm gonna pick Witherspoon.
I agree with you 100%. Just to change it up a little bit, because that's kind of where I was leaning, and I don't want to be exactly the same. So I'm gonna go Wilson here. Give a bookend to Aiden Hutchinson. And I think that guy has shot up everybody's draft board. And I think he has ultimately, I do think they probably go corner. But I think Wilson would be a good fit as well.
Agreed.
Heck, Will Anderson on the board. Lions are on the board. I'm going to have to do it.
They would knock the commissioner over trying to get to the podium if Will Anderson's on the board when they pick. I promise you.
I think
I know where you're going with this one with the Raiders. I know where you're going with this one.
Oh yeah, Bijan. No, I'm just messing with you. All right, CJ Stroud has got to be. I've heard mixed reports on them and CJ Stroud, but I don't think you can pass him up here.
So you have heard that the Raiders said that they're not taking a quarterback, right? Or do you think that's just smoke?
I think if Stroud falls to them there, the value.
Right.
I think it's just you can't pass up the value there.
Understood.
So, I think Skoronski would be very much in play there as well as Christian Gonzalez. I think they kind of do want a corner, but I think if Stroud falls, he'd be a very tough pass for them.
So we're up with me, Raiders?
Yes. Who you
Raiders, got? Raiders are obsessed with speed. That has never changed. They love fast. Who's the fastest corner in the draft? He is now a Raider.
Wait, who's the fastest cornerback in the draft? Witherspoon? Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, who? It's a tough one. The other day, I had Stroud going here. That's where I had the board going with Stroud. It's tough. I'm gonna go with my man Daniel Fleck. He said he thinks they may go Skoronski, so I'm gonna ride with him on this one. I'm gonna trust Daniel on this one. I'm gonna go Skoronski.
That's high stakes for me. All right, pick 8. Look at Bijan. Right at the very top of the board, just looking right at me here. I can't pull myself to do it. I've had Nolan Smith today. For me, I have Witherspoon and I have Tyree Wilson off the board. I do think this is where you'd see them trade the pick, but for the sake of me being consistent today and from what I think the Falcons love Nolan Smith. And so I know they love Nolan Smith. And so I'm going to pick Nolan Smith. Very straightforward.
Dan, who you got?
Hello, Daniel Flick. My name is Dan Kiley, and if you know anything about me, the Falcons hate Georgia players, and I am living by that narrative, and I'm not going to let it go. They will. I don't care if they had 5 consecutive picks in the first round; they would not pick a damn Falcons player or Georgia player. I would love to see him go Skoronski here to the tackle. That'd be great. Is this my board I'm looking at?
This is your board here.
All right.
Here's your top 7.
All of the smoke is going on Bijan Robinson. But this is a selfish pick. This is who I want. I want Gonzalez, and he's available on my board, so I'm taking Gonzalez because that's the guy that I want. But if they take tackle or Bijan, I'm fine. Like I mean, the board is so wide open right there. The way that mine fell, there's really not really a wrong answer. Well, yes, there are wrong answers, but there are so many right answers. I'm hoping the Falcons trip and fall on a right answer. I wouldn't be upset with Nolan either.
I'm going edge. Here. Tyree Wilson's on the board. I've had Lucas Van Ness. Me and Dan wholeheartedly disagree on the prospect that is Lucas Van Ness. But Tyree Wilson's on the board here. I think the Falcons need that edge player. And, I mean, shoot. Hot take. Daniel Flick, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he has the highest upside of any edge player in this draft class.
I would agree with you. I think the NFL would agree with you as well. So I think apparently Ryan Nielsen, new Falcons defensive coordinator, loves Tyree Wilson. If he's there at 8, I think they would probably knock over Roger Goodell as well. So that's for sure. If he's there, I think he's a Falcon. Chicago. I want to give them Smith and Jigba so bad, but I'm not going to do it. I think here, they've been connected with a lot of the top tackles. Who do I still have on the board? Do I have Paris Johnson on the board still?
You do.
I will take Paris Johnson at pick 9. I feel pretty good about it.
Just a reminder for the audience. Sorry, Daniel. Finish up. My bad.
No, I'm straight. I'm good.
No, it might be. Just a reminder for everybody, we're not going to go through all 32 picks because we don't want to hold up Daniel Flick for too long. Otherwise, our boss may kill us. We got to get to work. Yeah, so we're going to go through the first 10
top
picks.
10.
Top 10. Dan Kiley, who you got?
All right. I'm going to give Daniel Flick a not so fast, my friend, Lee Corso style. And listen, I'm born in Chicago. My grandpa played for the Bears. I'm telling you, Polacks, okay? We're like Polish. We're going Skoronski here. He is the most prototypical Bear. Like, oh my God, if he makes it this far and they don't move, that is a match made in heaven. I mean, the entire city. Well, it's not what it was back in the 80s and 90s, but he is the cut out of the cloth from Northwestern. It's the perfect fit, like a glove,
The local kid. I feel like that'd be a very well supported pick.
Oh, he's got a ski on the back of his name. I promise it's going to go well.
I'm going to go Jackson Smith and Jigba. I know Daniel wanted to do it, but he didn't. He went off. But, hey, let's get Justin Fields a playmaker. Let's get him somebody on the outside he can trust. Slot receiver. If you need one, if you want one, Jackson Smith and Jigba going to Chicago.
I like it. It's brave. Philadelphia at 10. Bijan. I want to go Bijan so bad. I just can't pull myself to do it. Peter Skoronski here makes he's been linked to them quite a bit. You can plug him in. They've got a hole at right guard. You let him start week 1 right guard with the potential maybe in a few years have him play tackle. But for now, for a team that really wants to run the football and legitimately can probably make another run at the Super Bowl again next year, Skoronski could be an impact Pro Bowl type of player as a rookie at guard, I feel like. And so draft him, plug him in, play him ASAP, and I think you'll see very, very early payoff there for Philadelphia.
That's an interesting pick. I think that – I don't know. I think Eagle fans would be happy with that, and I got another one if it fell to them before that I'll touch on after Dan. Dan, who you got going to the Eagles? I didn't even realize we got C.J. Stroud on the board here. I still have Witherspoon and Bijan on the board here. And Gonzalez. No. Sorry, I was just going through. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting, guys. We got a lot of really good players left on the boards here. Dan, who you got going at 10?
Where the hell did I have Stroud going?
You don't have Stroud anywhere.
Oh,
not yet.
Yeah, I don't have him gone. So the Eagles, well, I'm terrible at this if I still have Stroud on the board. There's no way he's lasting past 10. But listen, in my fairy tale land, you got the highest paid quarterback now, and he's got to have some weapons. And I think JSN is a perfect fit right there. Because I really do think they're in play for Derrick Henry. I think that's a real thing.
That'd scary. That is scary.
Yeah.
For me here, you saw they almost parted with Darius Slay. They almost did. They almost let him go. I'm going to say they're going to go out and get his eventual replacement. I'm going to go with Devin Witherspoon here. I don't know if this makes as much sense as it probably does if they got rid of Darius Slay. But, hey, you can never have too many damn good corners. I think Devon Witherspoon is going to be that for him. I'm going with Witherspoon at 10 to the Eagles. And that's going to wrap it up for the top 10s for all of us. I haven't checked the comments, so I don't know what everyone's saying. Okay, no Stetson to Atlanta. I mean, guys, we appreciate Daniel Flick for coming on with us. There was nobody else that we wanted to talk the draft with us. Your articles do get passed around in the group chats because you are that native Falcons reporter for us. So guys, Daniel, tell them about what you do, a little bit about what you do. I know we touched on it earlier, but give them that little intro.
Where can we find you?
Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, Twitter at DFlickDraft. You can find my articles, SI's Fan Nation. So si.com/NFL/Falcons is the primary website that I write for. The Falcons are kind of my main focus, but I also write about the Rams, Seahawks, Ravens, Harrison. You probably know all too well about that grind. But yeah, covering NFL. I've covered the Shrine Bowl this year, covered the Combine this year in person. So it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed hopping on. I appreciate the kind words for sure. So glad to hop back on whenever. Maybe we can run it back next year, Wednesday before the draft. I'm down. I'm down whenever. So no, I really appreciate you all having me on.
Yeah, well, I'm going to need Harrison. I'm going to need Harrison to go ahead and write these picks down and put them out on our page, and let's see how well we do. Just for fun, like I was telling Harrison before, it's like the roulette table, right? Like you have a chance, and we'll share it on our page and everything. You did an article with what you thought the entire Falcons draft looks like, right? And listen, there's a chance that you don't hit on a single one of them, and then there's a chance that you hit on every single one of them. And like once you get past the first round, I mean, hell, once you get past the top 15, you've got 32 different cultures that are going to be doing so many different things. It's just so difficult to project. Like I give you mad props for even trying to do a 7-round mock draft. That's insane.
A lot of work.
Good job. Yeah.
You know what, that might end up being my favorite draft week story, like as far as like the lead up to it, because it was probably 12:30, 1 a.m. and I was like, you know what, I feel motivated right now. So I just started knocking it out. I finished up about 2 a.m. and I woke up and I was like, that was not my best decision. But it worked out okay. So the hard part is waking up and being like, is that really the direction I want to go? And then I'm sure Harrison probably saw it in our little editor's chat there. I was like, I'm going to go change this real quick. Then I got on. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it. 2 a.m. me probably knew what he was doing a little bit better. So I rolled with it. We'll see how it goes. If I hit 2 or more, I will be doing cartwheels, and I don't know how to do cartwheels. We'll figure it out.
Like I said, this is the funnest time of year because we're all experts, right? Everybody wants to be an expert. But I appreciate you coming on. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the mock draft. George, your insights on these players, and you can tell you're very well informed. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, appreciate you. Pleasure to meet you, Dan.
With that, I'm going to close this out real quick. Episode 83 or 84, whatever the number is. I'm sure the podcast folks know what it is because they're 84. It's 84. Thank
84.
Dan, I'm going to give you your cue. I've been slacking these past few weeks, so let's close it out.
Let's go. Go Dawg!